My colleagues, Dr. Johnson and Dr. Strader. This has been an item that's been on the State Board's agenda almost every single month since I arrived here in 2013. And we're looking at, in the coming next two board meetings, seeing what the results of the new assessments in Maryland are and examining those. So we wanted to do some more context building for the State Board, as there are many things that will be considered this year around assessment results in terms of accountability and graduation requirements and all of those different efforts that we'll have to follow out of this and think about what that next step is, what makes the most sense for the students of Maryland. So I'll turn over to Dr. Johnson.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Mr. Smith, members of the board, Dr. Smith, today Dr. Doug Strader, who's our Director of Assessment, and I are here to present to you the final phase of the first year of the operational assessment, and that is the performance level setting process that took place the last week in July for high school, the third week in August for middle school, and the last week in August for elementary school. I am going to call on Mrs. Eberhardt and Ms. Sadhu later on in our presentation because you agreed and allowed both of them to participate. Mrs. Eberhardt was a member of the performance level team for mathematics 7 and 8, and Ms. Sadhu and I were in Denver together where we observed grades 3 through 8 in both English language arts and mathematics. And so we'll ask them to speak later on, and I know they will want to provide you with a perspective. So just to give our new board members some historical background, and once again, welcome. In 2014-15 of this year, we introduced a new state assessment, the PARCC assessment, and that acronym stands for the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. This was the first year of implementation of that new state assessment. And during the first year, we assessed students in grades 3 through 8 in English language arts and mathematics. At the high school level, we administered the test to students in English 10, Algebra 1, and in Algebra 2. So what you see before you is a rollout of the new standards nationwide. In 2009, there were 4 states with the Common Core standards, and in 2015, there are, can you go back? Sorry. There were 43 states plus the District of Columbia that introduced the new standards. And the assessment that we're talking about is, in fact, aligned to the new standards. And so to give you more information about the transition that has taken place in the state of Maryland, we drafted and finalized the Common Core standards here by the State Board in 2009 and 10. The new PARCC consortium was launched by the Maryland State Board in 2010. And in 2011, we finalized the new assessment design and released our model content frameworks for districts to use in the creation of their new curriculums aligned to the new standards. And then from there, we defined performance level descriptors for the 5 performance levels, of which 4 and 5 were chosen as determining students as college and career ready. And then in 2014, we participated in the field test in which we field tested the new PARCC assessment in all but 7 schools across the state of Maryland, giving all of our educators an opportunity to experience the new assessment, to give our students an opportunity to experience our new assessment, and to get accustomed to the new platform that we would be using for the administration of this test. And so during the 2014-15 PARCC administration, there were over 5 million students that were tested in 12 states. 1.2 million students were tested in a day, over 204,000 students were tested in 1 hour. This is probably the most robust testing administration that has ever been given in the history of education in America. For Maryland, there were 575,000 students that participated, and as I mentioned before, the tests that they were administered were in English language arts, reading and mathematics in grades 3 through 8, and Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and English 10. The results of those assessments will be released this fall at our October board meeting for high school and our December board meeting for grades 3 through 8. And at that time, you will have an opportunity to review scale scores for individual students and get a better understanding of where our students lie in the performance levels that were set by the performance level committees earlier this summer. So with that, I'm going to turn over the rest of the presentation to Dr. Strader. Dr. Strader serves as one of the state leads along with his colleague in Rhode Island, and they have been working very well together on creating this process and making sure, particularly Dr. Strader, making sure that the interest of Maryland and his students are kept in mind when these decisions are being made. Dr. Strader.
Thank you. So I just wanted to spend some time at a high level, give you a summary of the actions that have transpired in setting these performance levels. So as Dr. Johnson shared with you earlier, the PARCC has identified 5 performance levels, levels 4 and 5 being the determination for college and career readiness at those terminal courses at the high school level, or on track for college and career readiness for the lower grade levels, 3 through 8 high school. So what exactly is performance level setting? A panel of educators and content experts met to review the assessments themselves and to make determinations of how well or what's required of students to represent each of these levels. So again, with the PARCC assessments, there were 5 levels here. This occurred, as you can see here, in 3 consecutive meetings. A total of 12 committees of 20 panelists got together. That's 6 at the high school, which you can see on the left side here, Algebra 2, Geometry, Algebra 1, grade 11, grade 10, and grade 9. And another 6 committees were convened for the middle school levels, grade 7 and 8, as well as 3, 4, and 5, 6. They're outlined here. And you can see the dates. These have all occurred in the past now. They've all been completed. So the next steps, I wanted to share with you the representations of those panelists so you can see who was making the decisions here. And this is broken out by state. I've highlighted Maryland, so you can see Maryland had representation on every single panel. This first slide is illustrating English language arts. And of these panelists, this next slide is going to share with you their roles. Who were these folks? You can see by and large, teachers represented the majority of the panels. Also included were higher ed faculty and staff. More so at the high school level than the elementary level, but they were represented on both. You have administrators and other represents content supervisors from the individual LEAs and folks such as that, anyway, in the professional level. So that's with English language arts. And you'll see a similar pattern with mathematics. In mathematics, again, Maryland was represented on all the panels you can see here. And the makeup, again, you can see across the board between teachers, higher ed faculty, building administrators, content supervisors, and so forth. Notice the higher ed input here at the high school level. A lot of folks, faculty were involved in actually making these decisions and setting these standards in those terminal courses, which is different than what we've done in the past with our assessment programs. So how were the panelists selected? MSDE worked primarily with LEA assistant superintendents in charge of curriculum to select folks within their districts, as well as we worked with our higher ed counterparts in identifying the faculty. We also reached out to other individuals, such as board members here, and to assist in this process. The panelists were selected because they have strong content knowledge in ELA and mathematics, familiarity with the Common Core state standards, current or recent teaching experience, and/or experience working with diverse student populations. So the role of the panelist. Each panelist was tasked with making recommendations regarding what students at each performance level would be able to demonstrate in terms of their knowledge, skills, and abilities. They did this by evaluating the individual test questions on each test, judging how many points a student would likely earn. Yes, they took the tests, they took all of the tests, they took them multiple times. Didn't share their scores, though. So in particular, this is what they had to do, is address this question. How many points would a borderline level 3 student likely earn if they answered the question? There's 3 particular pieces to this that they struggled with as they approached this effort. First, you have to identify what is a level 3 student. There's performance level descriptors that go into that to define what that student looks like. You then have to define what is borderline. That's that threshold between the two performance levels. And then what does likely mean? Well, likely is defined as 2 out of 3 times. So you can see there is a lot of discrete information here for them to base their judgments. So this is called an item level judgment performance level setting process. So with that, after the panelists come up with their point values for each of the items, the points are then summed and thresholds calculated. Panelists then collaborate within each other, within their tables, sharing their results, and trying to form consensus around the recommendations. Those tables then expand to the whole group process, again, trying to create consensus. They repeat this effort at least 2 additional times. During each time that they get together, additional information is shared with them to assist in their consensus and their recommendations. Outside data for high schools, such as performance on SAT, ACT, PISA, for lower grade levels, NAEP. Other outside measures are then introduced to help them calibrate their understandings a bit, as well as impact data as a result of that between second and third judgment process. They can see the impact of what their judgments would be on the student bodies that they're looking at. So then next steps. After the performance levels, the thresholds have been summed up and calculated. They're then presented to the PARCC Governing Board, which is comprised of the state chiefs for adoption, and to the Advisory Committee on College Readiness, also known as ACER, for those high school cut thresholds for the college and career readiness piece. This was done August 12th for the high school threshold scores, and September 9th for the grades 3 through 8 thresholds. So why aren't the results available now? Right now, since the performance levels have been set and the governing bodies have adopted these, the psychometric work begins, and that is to assign the scale scores, the performance levels to all the data we have and go through the process of equating forms and all of that wonderful work that they're engaged in while we speak. So for performance level setting, what was used were online forms only. We did not wish to delay the reporting of the results any further, so paper was still being processed and scored. So with that, there was a decision made to use the online data only. And because 20% of Marylanders, roughly, as you can see here, 18.4% of Marylanders participated using paper, we have a substantial population within Maryland that is not represented in this data currently if we were to use this preliminary data. That's roughly 172,000 tests across the state that isn't represented in the data. Harford County, for your information by and large, 100% participation on paper. So they too, as a whole district, aren't represented in that data. So we feel it too preliminary to release any of the results we have now. We know the results will change when we introduce the paper to this preliminary piece. So with that said, this is our current reporting timeline. The next time we meet will be in October. During the October board meeting, we will be releasing all of the high school results. So you will see all the performance, you'll see the standards, you'll see everything at that point in time for high school. Then the data for the 3 through 8 results will be available for the December board meeting. So as Dr. Johnson referenced earlier, the next 2 board meetings will be releasing the information, the results for the PARCC assessments.
So with that, we will take any questions. But before we do that, I really would like to ask Ms. Eberhardt, Ms. Sadu, and Dr. Smith, who served on the English 10 panel, to make any comments about the process to give you a perspective. Ms. Eberhardt, do you want to start first?
Last month, I think I said a lot while you were there. But since last month, the joint governing panel had made a decision, which is reflected in the PowerPoint, which I think is important. In the past, we had been considering levels 3, 4, and 5. as college readiness. And the governing panel at their September 9th meeting decided that it's only levels 4 and 5 are college ready. So, and so we have to be aware that level 3, a student at level 3 will not, is approaching college readiness, but they're still going to be struggling in that next course after that to be able to reach that level. So this was, the panelists were on a conference call last week. And Dr. Smith, you are part of the governing board now? Okay, so I think that's the most up-to-date that I found, but you were at the last.
I was, as I felt in each of the classrooms or the groups, there were about 17 to 18 teachers that actually took the tests, commented on the tests, or honestly reflected on their classrooms, how the students would be doing, the reality of it. I thought they were very honest in many of their discussions, especially when they came up with, my student that I'm thinking of couldn't be at level 2. So you could hear the teachers' passions, frustrations, and excitement that there are levels that they need to work up, and that they felt the students could do it, that they could help their students reach those goals. I thought those discussions were very positive and very realistic, and you could connect that to our other conversations that we have here, where the principals are saying they need more training. You can see the teachers saying they need more. I think I'm hearing more of what they want to do more and need help with more, rather than, I was surprised to hear a little bit today about those that think that this will pass. I think that was the most disappointing comment that we need to correct. We need to get those people on board. Common Core is in 43 states. They are accepted standards. We need our children to do those things so they can be ready for the industry and the business. So it's all in the positive direction. I felt that I was glad I was there. The honesty of schools is to be taken very seriously, whether it is negative or positive or in between, because the truth helps us make those policies go much further. Policy is easy, it's practice and good practices that you talk about that are the hard piece. So I was impressed. I was glad I was there. I suspected some things. I suspected I would see some compromises there in level setting. I didn't see compromises. So that was a good thing, I think. Compromise kind of lowers the bar. There were no compromises. It was what it should be. And I recommend that we keep moving further in doing the work that we are doing. And it's always nice to hear that teachers want more, principals want more. I mean, how exciting is that? So MSD does a great job, and I think the fact that Maryland is at a high level speaks for everyone who's working to achieve rather than move away. So I think we are in the right place at the right time, but that's my belief. I've worked with this board for 6 years. I believe we've worked hard to get students and teachers and schools in where we think they ought to be. And I think a lot of work, when these things come out, when we set the standards and look at things, we're going to have to work harder to keep up. And I see the excitement in that.
Other comments? Yes, Steph?
This is my first time at the meeting, so I'm still wanting to know more. But my concern, what happens to the students? I have several concerns. What happens to the students who do not fit in that 4th and 5th? Right? What are you doing with the educators to get these kids where they need to be? Because my philosophy is, you're not teaching a curriculum, you're teaching the child in front of you. Mm-hmm. And we get so busy trying to teach a curriculum, and these poor teachers have 30, 40 kids in a class in some of the classrooms, that we forget that there's a child in front of us.
Right.
And I'm sorry if I'm being a little bit too passionate, we have to raise those standards. So are we ready to equip these teachers who are passionate and want to raise these standards for their kids? What are we doing for these teachers to help these kids go to that 4th and 5th level?
So I can address that. I think all we need to do is look historically at where we've been when we've introduced a new assessment. And when we've introduced that assessment, it's always been, the scores when they've come out have always been less than what we would like for them to be. And so that's a wake-up call for our teachers and for our districts. And what you will see immediately when these scores are released in October and December are teachers looking at ways in which they can now approach the teaching and learning process. And we will assist them in that process. When we implemented the new standards prior to the implementation of 2013-14, we had summer conferences in which we invited teachers and principals from across the state to participate in the process so that they would understand how to transition from the old standards to the new standards, and of course from the old curriculum to the new curriculum. It's interesting because we were only funded to do that for 3 years, and then we here at MSDE, a 4th and a 5th year. When I say funded, meaning that we were only able to pay teachers to participate in the process for 3 years. But we continued with that with those professional learning opportunities for teachers in year 4 and in year 5. And we had more teachers participate in year 4 and 5 than we had in years 1, 2, and 3, because we already started the implementation process, and they were very hungry for information and knowledge on what they needed to do in order to bring these standards to the forefront and be able to present a classroom, an emerging classroom, a 21st century classroom, to prepare their students for this type of assessment. But more importantly, it's not about assessment, preparing the students for our college and or career, as Dr. Smith has said before, after high school. And so the level 3 for those students that are approaching, we will continue to work with those teachers and continue to provide them with professional learning opportunities to make sure that they have what they need in order to prepare the students.
May I follow up again? I'm
Sure.
sorry. What's the role of a parent in all of this scenario? Because you're telling me the roles, what you're going to do with the students and with the teachers, but there's a role that I believe a parent should be included. Most parents cannot even interpret the data from a standardized test. So I believe you have to get a parent on board first so you can educate them and the children, especially low income, to educate them on what is the purpose and what are the criterias and what are your expectations for their child. And then you can get that partnership with the parent. If the parents just think their child's sitting down for 3 or 4 hours to take a test, it's no big deal. There has to be some parental involvement, and is that included in this process?
It is, and I think you already have it in your packet, but what you will see for the first time is a parent report that is like no other report we've ever been able to produce here in the state of Maryland. And then we were just talking earlier with the president from the Maryland Association of PTAs in working with parents from each of our 24 LEAs so that they can truly understand the parent report and how that parent report can be used by the parent to talk with the teacher about the progress of his or her child, and hopefully the teacher will be able to recommend some strategies for that parent to use at home with the child. So all of that is a part of our campaign to roll out as we begin to introduce the scores in October and December. It's a well thought out communications plan and a participation plan by all of the various stakeholders.
Can I? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Can I address a little bit about the parent involvement? My background is parent involvement. And I can confidently say that if you have the level 5 student, you have a level 5 parent involvement. We're finding through these conversations that most students will probably fall in the 1, 2, and 3 level. So any plan that we write for the parents, even if it is a platinum standard plan, which I think we may have, it's getting the parent into the school and the teacher and the meetings. That just doesn't happen. I would like to work with you on some creative ways. Maryland PTA, I have been on the board of Maryland PTA, tries an excellent, they have figured all the avenues on how to reach the parents. Schools have principals, teachers, yet we know those parents that you're concerned about are not talking to the teacher. It's not happening. And this is the background, and I'm not saying that's what happens today. I'm talking about 8 years ago. When I was president of the high school PTA, when I went into when I was invited by the executive board for next year to consider my position, the message I got was there are 29 members of the PTSA at that high school. With every effort that I made, and I know that people are making on behalf of the kids, I was told that maybe 50 parents might come in on parent-teacher conference day. With so much effort in that first 5 weeks, we got only 99 parents because I was so concerned with that number and involvement. With all, I'm telling you, day and night efforts, we got 99, which was as poor. People said that was a good participation, and I said, don't make me sick now. My standard was, we are way below. What I'm trying to say, I don't think things have changed much. Efforts have changed a lot on MSD's part, Maryland PTA's part, principal's part. But the numbers, I bet you, are still the same.
It's a continuing effort. Mr. Finn, you have a comment?
Yeah, there's one thing about this I'm very unhappy about it. I mean, the first step in parent involvement is clear communication with parents about information about how their child is doing. And this draft report does not do that. It fails the test of clarity for parents. The draft you're showing us today for a level 2 child in 9th grade, you would have to have a PhD to interpret from this report that this child is not on track for college. You can figure it out if you're capable of reading the fine print and linking 3 different concepts in this report together. You can deduce that this child is not ready for college. Nowhere in this report does it state clearly to a parent that your child, partially meeting expectations, is not on track for college readiness in this subject. Most parents receiving this report will not understand that their child is not on track for college and career. It is not clear.
May I?
We probably need to move on, but let's
One
close out
last
our comments.
One last comment. I felt that, again, if you were the parent whose child is achieving 3, 4, and 5, if you are that parent, I found this to be quite clear. If you are the parent whose child is achieving 1, 2, and 3, this lacks a little bit.
It lacks a lot.
Okay, it's an opinion. I thought I understood it, but then again, I probably am the parent of a child who's at level 5. So I think we need to differentiate who's understanding the report and how to reach. The first thing is, right from early childhood, the parent should be required to come and meet with the teacher. How do we put that in place? It should not be a choice. I think if we could reach that point, we would have solved a lot of our problems.
I think that we know that parent involvement is important, and it's not where it needs to go. But a lot of it has to do with how it's implemented and what strategies people are used to get people to understand this. Because it is, it's a threat to a lot of people because many of them haven't had a good experience at school. So anything that we can do to help them would be really, really helpful. I know that a lot of schools are doing parent sessions and that sort of thing, but it's always a problem to get people out. But we just have to continue to be creative and look at this and see who's doing this in a good way and probably try to share that so that we can get it better. But yes, it is cumbersome. It is a problem, but those parents that you need most are the ones the hardest to get to, and we just have to figure a way to do that.
Sure.
We have to continue to work at that.
I think that's the point.
Yes.
Okay, just 2 questions. First, when we get the report in October, it will include the paper and pencil results?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. And second, I thought this report was going to come from PARCC.
It does come from
But
PARCC.
but it has MSDE on the top of it.
It's customized for each state. The report is customized for each state.
Okay, so when parents fuss about this report, they're not going to be fussing to PARCC.
No.
It's going to be, we created this.
It is actually created at PARCC, and then each state customizes it with their logo. I think, as I've listened to this conversation, certainly something we can do is to go back and look at how we might want to supplement the PARCC report, which is something we've been talking about here already, so that when that goes out, and in order to do that, we need to sit down with the local school systems and talk with the local school systems about how to put this in language that will be immediately clear to all parents about the performance of the child. So we'll certainly take a look at that over the next 6 weeks before any of these are released. And we'll be back to you in October with high school statewide data. We won't have system data yet. That doesn't come out till the second week of November, but we'll continue this conversation based on your comments here today.
I just want to add, PARCC is being evasive here. They're setting very high standards. 4 or 5 equals on track for college, and then they are being evasive with respect to what parents are going to understand when they get these reports. Trying to have it both ways, like kind of we'll set very high expectations, then we will shield people from the truth. Not good.
Okay. Any other?
Are you saying that PARCC designed this parent report?
Yes, the consortium came from the consortium.
I'm glad you clarified that. Because I agree, I think it should say like level 4 and level 5 equals college readiness, and everything else does not. Like that, it should be that
Clear.
So I appreciate you clarifying.
Right, and we will certainly work with local school systems to talk about how to make it even more clear to the parents in Maryland. Dr. Finn, I would just respond by saying the behavior you describe is not uncommon in the world. And I understand exactly what you're saying.
It is not always in the interests of local school systems to be crystal clear with parents about the performance of their children. The job of the State Department of Education in this matter is to be the truth squad, the auditor, the honest broker of information to parents, not relying on it to be filtered back through a school or, for that matter, a teacher who might just as soon not have an angry parent.
Understand?
That's true.
Okay, thank you so
Thank you.
much.